Chapter 109 to 110. Tsunade barged into the office of the Hokage only to find herself under two sets of eyes as the discussion between Danzo and Hiruzen abruptly ceased. She wasn't deterred much under their scrutiny, not really caring about their opinion of her barging in. Instead, she just walked towards the couch into which she lazily flopped before speaking. "Don't mind me. Finish your gossiping, old folks. I can wait." She waved her hand lazily in a dismissive manner, enjoying how their eyes twitched. Danzo was livid. The Senju brat just interrupted a very important meeting. He wanted to get some clan ninjas to his route, but Hiruzen was vehemently against it. Danzo knew he would eventually persuade the old monkey. He always did. The usual shtick of, "I do it in the shadows and you pretend you didn't see," always worked. In truth, he already had a few lost clan females strapped to a table with the sole purpose of breeding more clan kids. He would give these kids to orphanages owned by him, naturally not the ones inside of Konoha, and then, when the kids are older, he would take them back into root, getting rid of weak and bad seeds while nurturing those strong and resilient ones. Needless to say, these females he managed to kidnap would not leave their current accommodations for a long, long time. He also had quite a bit of clan males being trained, but those were in significantly lesser numbers since kidnapping a female for breeding was easier than kidnapping and persuading a male to serve him. They usually got aggressive and had to be put down. All Danzo needed was to make Hiruzen give him okay for having clan ninjas en route, and he would be able to not fear being persecuted when he reveals these clan ninjas he had. At that time, nobody would look how they came to be, nor would they have any right to. Danzo sure as hell would make sure of that by having the council set some laws in place. Laws that individually might not even make sense, but together would create a perfect shield for this operation of his. And yet, when he was almost done persuading Hiruzen, the Senju brat just barged in and fucked up 4 hours of his persuasion efforts. Hiruzen just watched how his friend huffed in anger, something he didn't see Danzo do for 2 decades at the very least, and walked away from his office while glaring murderously at Tsunade. He was aware that Danzo probably wanted more than just a few willing clan shinobi for his route, as he put it, but for all the smarts he had, Hiruzen couldn't really figure out what was his old friend's end goal. Instead, Hiruzen looked at Tsunade and with a tired sigh, greeted her. "Hello, Tsunade. What can I do for you?" He tried to ignore the broken door and thanked heavens for sending his ANBU away before Danzo came in. Could have been bloody otherwise. Not that he believed his ANBU would be stupid enough to come into Tsunade's path when she is in a mood to smash things. "I came to warn you," Tsunade plainly stated as she looked at the pictures of her grandfather and granduncle with fondness. Hiruzen wanted to bloom in a full-blown smile when he saw it, but her next words chilled him to the bone. "Kiri is planning a full offensive to the northern shores of the Land of Fire," she said as if it didn't even matter. Hiruzen's mouth opened as 1,000 thoughts swirled in his mind. He had no idea what to think about that. It was plausible.
Probable.
Possible, even. As a plan. If Mizukage did what Tsunade just said he was planning to do, it could spell the end of Konohagakure. Hiruzen realized in horror. "Why do you think so?" he carefully asked Tsunade. If it was true, now was not the time to panic. It was time to act and plan accordingly to this new information. "You surely have some proof. Jiraiya's spy network spans every single nation. He has spies even in the land of Earth, but no report of Kiri forces planning to attack our country was received." "Well, duh," Tsunade deadpanned. "The Mizukage is much smarter than you think yourself to be, sensei," she said in a sing-song tone. "I am sure Jiraiya informed you I lived some time in Kirigakure. I have a few friends there." She deliberately stopped, letting Sarutobi digest what he just heard. "And they informed me. Believe me or not, that's not my problem. I gave you the intel I had, and that's where it ends for me." Tsunade stood up and shrugged. "Anyway, I'll return to the hospital," she said before marching out of the broken door, ignoring Sarutobi calling her name. Rei wanted her to alert Konoha. To be honest, Tsunade didn't really have much fondness for the village itself. Could burn for all she cared. The possessions of her clan were already stored safely in Rei's dimension, and she didn't much care for the lands. After all, even if Konoha burned to the ground, the lands would still belong to the Senju clan. The clan money was also in the bank, not in the village itself. As for her grandfather's wish, she could care less what one idealistic fool wanted. The village was corrupt and twisted. The village higher-ups were responsible for the extinction of the Senju clan. Tsunade was only curious how her grandfather would react to hearing this. Sure, he wanted peace, but he was a Senju. The family went first, no matter what angle one looked at it. Tsunade had no doubt Hashiramaji would burn the village down himself if it saved the Senju clan. "I just wonder why Rei wants Konoha to survive." Sure. If it fell, there would be a power vacuum and the war would probably considerably lengthen. By now, the villages are going on fumes and 1 to 2 years should be enough to end the war, but is it really worth it? We could maneuver better if there is a war among nations. Tsunade thought in confusion. Rei informed her he would defect from Kiri, and as such, It would be easier for him to do whatever he wanted to do while Kiri was preoccupied with war. Tsunade had no idea why he wanted to alert Konoha to something that could be a fatal attack. Well, he probably has his own plans. She shrugged, deciding to just go along with it. At the same time, the Hokage was cradling his head, for the first time since the start of the war, not knowing what to do. If Tsunade was right, then this was a major threat to the village. He would also have to reevaluate the Mizukage, something he didn't want to admit he was wrong about. Alas, he didn't really have much of a choice. If he believed Tsunade or not, he was grateful she alerted him, and it made his heart warm that his student still cared for the village and its people. Since she returned, she was completely cold and uncaring, especially during the council meetings. At times, he wondered if she was a Nara, as she often just laid her head on the table or tended to her polished nails, not really listening to what they discussed. Her most likely reply to any question was, "Don't care, do whatever," and it really worried Hiruzen. But he was unable to complain since the civilians and ninjas alike utterly loved her. If he decided to give her the hat, he knew the village would burst into celebrations despite being in the middle of the war. Tsunade was just that good of a medic. Every single clan had many fatally wounded people she somehow saved. Nobody except Tsunade had even an inkling how, but they clearly lived past something that should have killed them. Tsunade was always cordial towards people and never acted high and mighty. She was a senju after all. This made the civilians love her despite her bitchy attitude when it came to scolding people who didn't listen to her medical advice. For people, it was just a sign that she cared, and while they always left the hospital grumbling under their noses, they appreciated it. Tsunade Senju was a legend before she left the village. But now that she returned, she didn't even need to enter the battlefield, something that irked many, and despite that, she became one of the biggest heroes of this war. The number of lives she saved, Hiruzen really couldn't complain about her acting like an utter bitch to him and anyone on the council. Sadly, that was also the sole reason why he was unable to pass the hat to her. He feared the council would be dismantled sooner rather than later if that happened, and he could not in good conscience do that. "Tsunade, why can't you be a cute and obedient girl like you were as a genin?" He groaned and banged his forehead on his table while pressing a button under it to call his ANBU. Not a second later, for people appeared kneeling in front of his desk. "Hokage-sama," they chorused. "Three of you back into your positions. Owl, wait until I write a message for Jiraiya. I will need you to deliver it discreetly," Hiruzen said, not bothering to wait for a reply. He took his pipe out of the drawer before starting to smoke as he wrote new orders for his spymaster. It was high time to get a better look at the actions of Kirigakure. Team Downpour was standing on a small hill as the sun rose behind their back, bathing them in orange light while they observed their new supposed target, a minor town called Tenera. The town that was the target of the second part of their mission. May frowned and crossed her arms under her non-existent chest as she looked at the town, squinting her eyes in annoyance. "Are we really going to massacre the civilians?" she asked, a bit peeved, not really caring about the lives of strangers. Nevertheless, she was irked to be ordered to kill someone who can't defend himself. After all, killing an army of mercenaries who can't even swing a blade properly and killing untrained kids and defenseless, weaponless people are two different things. She would rather not. Of course not. Conan snorted at how ridiculous the notion of them slaughtering unsuspecting civilians sounded. Sure, in their missions they razed a few castles to the ground, but with hordes of clones and the spying abilities of her paper, it could not be easier to find out who was actually deserving to be drowned and who not. Nor was it difficult to relocate the people deemed innocent away before they actually struck. It's not like they went in and just dumped a large area of effect jutsu, not caring who would be hit. There was a reason why they were the go-to demolition experts. It was not like they never killed an innocent either. That was something unavoidable in their profession. Nobody who was Chunin at least for a half year already ever avoided doing that. Whether as collateral damage or target of assassination. It was a part of the job, and Conan made sure May knew that and made her peace with it before she even became a genin. Ray didn't believe in not preparing May for these tough choices beforehand to preserve her childhood. He would rather have her prepared and take some childlike happiness from her life rather than dead later on. But neither Conan nor Ray would ever slaughter an entire town just because it was asked of them. They lived through the war in Amigakure and the assault of Konoha ninjas on their town. Neither of them really wanted to be seen in the position of the Konoha ninjas. Well, technically, Ray quipped in an amused tone, "It was never outright stated we have to kill. They said distract, and that's exactly what we will do," he stated, earning himself a chuckle from Conan before she lovingly kissed him on the cheek. "Never outright stated, my ass," she mentally laughed. Sure, the Mizukage never said it out loud, but it was implied in such a manner only a mentally retarded person would miss it. Guess this was the reason why he burned our orders after reading them, pretending to lose them. She noted with mirth shining in her eyes. "Yua, trust Ray to understand the orders however it fits him. May thought in deadpan as she desperately tried to prevent the corners of her lips tugging upwards. Tanara was an important town in the Land of Fire. It was the main mining town in the entire southwestern section of the country, and it was also the only place in the Land of Fire where chakra metal could be mined. This led many blacksmiths to settle into the town, and many famous forging companies were established and resided in the town. Tanara was the main supplier of the highest quality chakra weapons in the country. Not to mention they were also one of the main suppliers of kunai, ninja wire, and shurikens as well. Because of its importance, Tanara had always 30 ANBU stationed in the town, and now during the war, a regiment of 100 ninja was added to it. Most of these were only chunins, but it was still one of the most defended places in the country if one added around 2,000 fire country samurai courtesy of daimyo. Despite being far from the borders, and since the Land of Wind was an ally of the Land of Fire in this war, there was literally no threat to the town whatsoever. And yet, the station troops inside were numerous. The town was just that important. So, why was the town in complete disarray? The first people who realized something was wrong were the miners. When they came to the mines in a merry mood and started to use their pickaxes, a smoke engulfed them and they suddenly found themselves holding a bouquet of origami flowers. The miners quickly started looking for working pickaxes only to find none. In their places were just more bouquets with an awkward message of, "Don't pick axes, pick up girls." Without their tools, they could not mine, so the dejected miners went back home while grumbling under their noses. At that time, they didn't yet know there was no pickaxe left in the entire town courtesy of Conan and her lazy humor. The worst part? She made sure to steal every bit of or any ingot she found in the entire village and stored them in her storage dimension alongside the mining tools, effectively crippling the mining and forging business in the town. Ray had a bit more vicious thing in mind, and the next group of people who noticed something amiss in the town were the samurai and ninjas. Poor fellas didn't even have the time to deal with the complaints of miners and forgers alike due to the theft of ingots. The samurai suddenly found themselves missing their swords, and all hell broke loose as they ran around the town, looking literally everywhere in a frenzied madness induced by sword deficiency. One poor guy was even flipping the skirts of women, wondering if he would find some holy sword underneath them. The ninjas, on the other hand, wondered how they could lose their forehead protectors. The forehead protectors were very important to them. They had the function of identification tag, and losing it was a mark of utter shame. Needless to say, they also looked all around the town in frenzy, and for them, Ray prepared a small surprise. Many ninjas found their forehead protectors in places riddled with childish traps, and by the time they managed to retrieve them, they were either repainted to rainbow glory by paint bombs or got closely reacquainted with sticky feather bombs courtesy of all the generous chickens in the town who now sported a new fashion style. Bald one. When the ninjas, after hours of effort to get their precious forehead protectors back, finally managed to do so and put them on their foreheads, these protectors just burst into smoke. Many ninjas became bald that day while having Shine Youth tattooed on their heads by some non-removable seal that prevented hair from growing. Frankly, Jiraiya was quite busy in the upcoming months. May was told to target the forges, and she decided to go childishly into it. The walls of every forgery were repainted to look like a sky with a rainbow. The thick gray protective aprons were changed for frilly pink thin ones used for cooking, sporting nice unicorns. Many housewives would miss their aprons later that day, but May really needed something as a base to create her super-duper cute aprons of embarrassing doom. She didn't forget to add itching powder from the inner parts either, nor the small genjutsu that would make them appear as the protective aprons for 30 minutes before dissipating. May only needed the smiths to put them on, since she made sure to ask Ray to inscribe a strong sticking seal to them. No way the blacksmiths could take it off anytime soon. She only wondered how they would solve the problem of peeing with them on. Oh well, not her problem. Her next target was the safes in the forgeries, and they were also completely cleaned out by May, as instead of money, she deposited tons of pink toilet paper. At the end of the day, the peaceful village was quite quiet, but underneath that mask of normalcy, this day was a disaster for the town that lost its ability to supply the ninjas with weapons and mine the chakra metal. Needless to say, both Hokage and the daimyo would have to be informed. Unknown to the poor victims, the team downpour was just starting. After all, they had a few months to waste, since they didn't want to return before the attack on the northern shores was over. Lazying and terrorizing the townsfolk of Tanara from the shadows seemed much more fun.